Now we'll move on to look at the muscles which produce movement at the knee joint. We've met most of them already. The one muscle that extends the knee is the massive quadriceps. We saw it briefly in the last section. We'll take a better look at it now. The main flexors of the knee are the so-called hamstring muscles, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and biceps femoris. Besides flexing the knee, the hamstring muscles also extend the hip. We took a good look at them in the last section. Here, we'll just revisit their insertions. In addition, we'll look at three muscles at the back of the knee that we haven't yet seen: popliteus, gastrocnemius, and plantaris. We'll start with quadriceps. Its name comes from the fact that it has 4 heads. Oddly, these are named as though they were separate muscles. 3 of the heads arise from the femur. They're called vastus intermedius, vastus medialis, and vastus lateralis. The 4th head, rectus femoris, arises from the hip bone. All 4 heads converge on the quadriceps tendon, which we've seen. We'll start with the deepest of the heads, vastus intermedius. Here it is. It forms a bulge on the front of the femur. Vastus intermedius arises from this broad area around the lateral aspect and front of the femur. Wrapped around the outside of vastus intermedius are vastus medialis and vastus lateralis. These two cover vastus intermedius almost completely. Their fibers run obliquely all the way round to the back. Here's lateralis, here's medialis, almost meeting it. Vastus lateralis arises from the lateral edge of the linea aspera and from the side and front of the greater trochanter. Vastus medialis arises from the medial edge of the linea aspera and from just below the lesser trochanter. The thin strip of bone between these two lines of origin provides the insertion of all the adductor muscles and also the origin of the short head of biceps. Now let's add rectus femoris to the picture. Here it is. Rectus femoris arises from the ilium just above the hip joint. Its tendon of origin has 2 parts, a posterior or reflected part and an anterior or straight part. The anterior part arises from this prominence, the anterior inferior iliac spine. The posterior part arises from just above the acetabulum. All 4 heads of quadriceps converge on the quadriceps tendon. The lowest fibers of vastus lateralis and medialis insert onto the sides of the patella. The principal action of the quadriceps muscle is to extend the knee. When the foot is off the ground, that action simply straightens the leg and holds it straight. When the foot is on the ground, the action of quadriceps has several important effects. In normal walking, quadriceps straightens the leg as the foot reaches the ground, then keeps the leg straight while the hamstring muscles extend the hip. Quadriceps is also one of the 2 big anti-gravity muscles of the lower extremity. Its partner, which we've seen already, is gluteus maximus. Acting together, quadriceps at the knee and gluteus maximus at the hip lift the body upward when we climb uphill, when we rise from a sitting position, and when we jump. The same muscle actions propel us forward when we're pushing a heavy load. In addition to these actions, when quadriceps and its partner, gluteus maximus, act in balance with the force of gravity, they control our rate of descent as we sit down. And also when we walk downhill. We need to digress for a moment to look at a structure called the adductor canal, which lies between vastus medialis and the adjoining adductor longus muscle. The adductor canal is important because the femoral vessels run through it in their course from the front of the thigh to the back. Here's vastus medialis. Here are the adductor muscles, magnus behind, longus in front, and brevis up here. The adductor canal is formed by the groove between adductor longus and vastus medialis, and by this sheet of fascia, called the roof of the adductor canal, which bridges over between the muscles. The adductor canal is covered over by the sartorius muscle. Now we'll complete our picture of the muscles around the knee by looking at three muscles at the back that we haven't met yet: popliteus, gastrocnemius, and plantaris. Here's the popliteus muscle. It arises from this area on the back of the tibia and inserts up here on the lateral epicondyle of the femur. The tendon of popliteus passes through the capsule of the knee joint to reach its insertion. Popliteus is a minor flexor of the knee, and it can also produce medial rotation of the tibia. Lying on top of popliteus is the small plantaris muscle. It's a vestigial structure. It arises from the lateral epicondyle of the femur. The tiny tendon of plantaris runs down on the back of this big muscle, soleus. We'll see where it ends up in the next section. Lying on top of the two small muscles that we've just seen is the much larger gastrocnemius muscle. Gastrocnemius arises by two heads from the back of the medial and lateral condyles of the femur. Gastrocnemius runs downward and joins with the underlying soleus muscle, which we'll see in the next section, to form the calcaneal tendon, or heel cord. Gastrocnemius has a slight flexing action at the knee, but its main action by far is at the ankle joint. We'll see it again in the next section. Now that we've seen all the muscles that arise or insert at the knee joint, let's see how they all fit together. Besides being the largest joint in the body, the knee joint is also much the most complicated. Before we move on to look at the muscles which produce knee movement, let's review what we've seen of the bones and of the knee joint. On the femur, here's the lateral condyle and epicondyle, the medial condyle and epicondyle, the adductor tubercle, and the intercondylar notch. On the tibia, here's the lateral condyle, the medial condyle, the tibial tubercle, and the facet for the fibula. Here's the head of the fibula, the neck of the fibula, the proximal tibiofibular joint, and the patella. Here's the medial meniscus, the lateral meniscus, the anterior cruciate and posterior cruciate ligaments, the fibular collateral ligament, the tibial collateral ligament, the quadriceps tendon, the patellar ligament, and the joint capsule. You can use this overview as a brief review section. Here on the front are quadriceps, sartorius, and gracilis. On the back, here is semitendinosus and semimembranosus. Here's biceps femoris, and here's gastrocnemius. Here's plantaris and popliteus.